Hello, Mike.
We are now being streamed live on YouTube, which is super exciting. I always feel like the start of these sound like one of those bad, comedy skits where you have people sitting around, with the headphones on. Oh, there's the perfect time for Jeff to show up with his headphones, and we're sort of doing an NPR skit, and everyone's talking really calmly. And
I don't watch these kind of programs. You've got to tell me where you can watch that.
I mean, it's basically everything on French TV, Pascal.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Thanks for everybody who's joining us. We're going to give this a few moments before starting. Pascal, thanks for joining us and hosting this today as a special, moderator guest star extraordinaire.
Thanks to all the panelists for taking the time on I know it's busy time for everybody. So
as you said, remarkable how busy everything has become over the past month.
Yeah, definitely. And Mike, do you want to wait another minute or two until you
start? No, I think we can get started. I want to thank everyone for joining us in the first of our 2022 annual payment series. As you may recall from previous years, we like to do 3 webinars a year, and this year we're starting off with how we as an association and as an industry are looking to expand the Open Payment Alliance into a host of adjacent use cases. This, as I said, will be the first of 3 webinars this year. We want to thank our payment sponsor for the year, Adyen. They've been sponsoring these webinars and sponsoring the payment track at Hedna for the past few years, and we do appreciate everything they've done. My role here is just to introduce the session. For those of you who are seeing me and thinking, oh my God, he's going to talk a lot, you will not see my face again in about 2 minutes. I just want to let everyone know that part of the outcome of today's session is that we are renewing our efforts for the Open Payment Alliance. You can expect, for those of you who've registered for the working group in the past, you will start to receive communications about our plans for 2022. For those who haven't, please go to the hedna.org site or the Hedna 365 app and let us know if you're interested. We should have a couple of meetings set up before the Hedna conference in Atlanta in May, which is the 23rd to 25th. Wanted to give a very quick high level that on Monday afternoon of that conference, we will have a fintech track focused on a few different topics in the payment area. The first will be sort of a one-on-one discussion with Anne-Marie Graham, who's the new head of hospitality payments strategy for Amadeus. So we should expect some interesting perspectives on that. And then we have a discussion about multi-currency pricing, which Lori and a gentleman named Mark Pedrosa, who's with a company called Cantox, will lead. We will also have a session on what hotels want, what they really want, and what they can think they want, and what they can have. And we have a few hoteliers that will be joining us for that. And then we're going to have a really interesting main stage discussion at the Atlanta conference about one of our favorite topics. It sounds really dry, but it will undoubtedly be very engaging. What is merchant of record? What does that mean? And really the focus is, how has a fear of that term driven the hotel industry over the years? So I just wanted to encourage everyone to come to Atlanta. We'll also have an OPA working group meeting on the Monday afternoon, and it should be a great conference. And then we'll do it again at a venue to be finalized in Europe in September. So with that, Pascal, again, thank you for moderating this panel. Was there anything else that you felt I needed to add, or are you good for me to disappear into the nether regions.
Mike, Mike, thanks for the guest appearance from, I believe, Spain. So thanks a lot for that. What I suggest we do is we now go straight into the webinar discussion. So the way we'll do it, we'll quickly introduce each other so that you know who is around the table. Then Javi will share 1 or 2 slides. It's not meant to be a long presentation, just an overview of OPA, just so that we all have the right context. And then it'll be your typical webinar discussion. You have a few questions. I'll be the moderator. I've got a few questions for the panel members. The good news for the attendees is that you can, of course, ask questions into the tool. And the other good news is we'll keep you busy. We'll have a couple of poll questions in the next 45 minutes where we'd like you to vote and share your views. So let's start with a quick introduction. So I'm Pascal Borg. I'm one of the directors at Edgar Dunn & Company. We are a international consultancy focused on payments, and I run our travel payments practice, and I've been involved in Hedna for many years. Then if I ask each panel member, maybe we can go in the alphabetical order, so there's no jealous. I believe the first one ought to be D. If you can maybe introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Dee Thomas, and I'm product director at Onyx CenterSource. I am over the meetings and events product line here at Onyx, but Onyx is probably most well known for the commission payment processing that we have done over the years.
Thanks, so Dee. If my alphabet is correct, I think Jeff, you can maybe introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jeff Gallo, Director of Global Merchant Services at IHG Hotels and Resorts. I help our hotels with the price of accepting payments by working with the card networks, the acquirers, third-party vendors, and solutions to help lower those costs to the hotels. I also provide education to them on how to accept it on a cheaper way and a safer way.
Okay, thanks a lot. And then we have Laurie in a very sunny and bright location.
Hi, I'm Laurie Gablehouse. I work with Worldline as the head of our global payments and product, kind of bridging the gap between sales and product and helping our customers understand the options they have for the various solutions that they need.
Thank you. And finally, Javi, I'll let you introduce yourself. And as you'll be talking, I would suggest that maybe you can spend a couple of 2 or 3 minutes. I know you've got a couple of slides just to give the background and explain OPA. So just over to you for that quick intro.
Sure. So I'm Xavi. I'm I'm the chairman of Voxel, one of the founders, and I've been very involved in the B2B payments working group within Hedna, very active in the development of the Open Payment Alliance concept first and standard next, after HTNG took over the design of the standard. And as Pascal just mentioned, I prepared just a couple of slides, which maybe you've seen already, because I guess a lot of you have been in other webinars or were already acquainted with the Open Payment Alliance. But just for the benefit of those who've never seen anything or heard anything about the Open Payment Alliance, we thought it might be interesting to at least explain briefly what it is all about. So in a nutshell, in a couple of minutes, the idea of the Open Payment Alliance is that this online distribution channel that you have on the screen, which is a very simple infrastructure, very optimal for channeling bookings from booking engines to hotels' PMS systems, today only allows to send as a form of payment a credit card, maybe a virtual credit card, but that's it. There's not a possibility to send some other alternative forms of payment, or there's no possibility to predefine how to orchestrate the payment in a fully automated manner if there's an invoicing requirement or if there's a need for taking out insurance, because in order to prevent exposure to currency fluctuations and things like that. This very simple, our claim with the Open Payment Alliance is that this very simple block diagram is going to evolve over the course of the next few years to something that looks like this. We call it the era of the payment manager, because essentially what we're saying is that what used to go through the upper channel here, bookings plus virtual credit cards or credit cards in general, the payment, the credit cards or the form of payment is actually in the future going to be decoupled from the booking reservation channel. It's going to go through this payment manager, which is the counterpart of the channel managers, the same way that channel managers optimize the flow of bookings from booking engines to PMSs. Payment managers do the same thing for the flow of payments from the payment systems of travel companies to the payment systems of hoteliers, and it can do so bidirectionally, right? That's the other important thing. So the role of the payment manager is to decouple bookings from payments, handle payments in a very efficient manner, make sure that any form of payment, any conceivable form of payment is supported. You're no longer constrained to just one form of payment. In different scenarios, you can explore different forms of payment, different payment service providers. And that's why the payment manager is not just connected to the online booking channel, but it's also connected to the payment partner ecosystem, so that the payment manager is actually also responsible for automatically orchestrating everything that needs to happen for a payment to take place, from the generation of the form of payment until the settlement, including maybe taking out insurance for that payment, collecting an invoice, doing a straight-through processing, everything that needs to happen from the time of booking until the time of settlement. The payment manager will orchestrate automatically through a network of payment partners. That's the idea, removing the dependency from the online distribution channel. And we think that, we claim that this is going to change the name of the game in B2B payments in the travel industry in the next few years. And that's why we truly believe this is going to be a new era. So that's my quick introduction for those who never heard about this before.
Perfect, and at least I found it was very clear, and I think it was very good that you did that. Maybe before we talk about the content, the use cases, the benefits, maybe another update for the people that are attending and that might be interested in getting involved and so on. And I'm looking both at Laurie and Dee. I think what happened is 5-6 years ago with Mike Carlo, we did a position paper to really do a diagnostic of payments in the hospitality sector. Then there were 3 working groups, right, around guest-centric payment, B2B, and commission payment. And be great, maybe again in 1 or 2 minutes, just to give an overview to the attendees in terms of what has the work that's been done to date, how these groups working, and is there still room for people to get involved? So I don't know if Laurie or Dee, you can give us an update on the latest developments.
Sure. So for the Open Payment Alliance, Xavi kind of touched on that already. We've been developing the specification for payments to decouple it from the booking or distribution channel. We've since that was published, the focus of the Open Payment Alliance working group has been on adoption and transformation of the current B2B payment process into the fully streamlined, transparent, and trusted payment ecosystem that Xavi was just showing there. So as we got together in Miami last October with the other 2 working groups, the 3 working groups were brought together. We talked about the goals that each of these working groups had, and there were similar goals. We determined that there were a lot of similarities there, and we were kind of working towards a lot of the same end game. So we made the decision to bring those working groups together. And since then, I know we've drafted a new charter for the combined working group, and moving forward with that. Laurie, you want to update on your working group?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what happened. We've done the technical framework specifications now in conjunction with HT&G that's been published. And so from the guest-centric side of that process, we had our own working group, but in reality, the overlap technically is there. So we worked together on that publication. And I think from the guest-centric side, what we found out in Miami and what we all agreed on in Miami is that we now really need to move forward in terms of that education and that understanding of what this means to the hoteliers, to make sure that within their own organizations, they can determine how to tap into this ecosystem and to take advantage of all of the stuff that we've learned and done over the past couple of years. So I think this is a very good time for us to bring our forces back together, so to speak, and figure out how we move that forward in terms of the ROI side of why does this matter? Why did we spend 3 years, 4 years working on it, so to speak? So I think this is where we're at now.
Well, thanks for the update, and hopefully that will get some of the attendees to want to help with adoption and to get involved in this combined working group. So let's maybe now focus a bit more on content and on the OPA, especially in terms of the different use cases, right? To make it very pragmatic. So maybe starting with you, Dee, can you give us just an overview when the team worked on OPA? What were the kind of the main use cases that you had that you're considering, and then it'd be great to get Jeff's view if these are the right ones. But maybe you can tell us at first what are the main use cases.
Sure. So initially, when we set out, there were 4 main use cases that we were attempting to address with the OPA specification. 3 of those were around the payment for the booking. And the 4th was around the post-booking compensation or commission payment going back to the agency. So the 3 payment use cases that we kept in mind through the development of that specification were advanced deposit or prepayment to the hotel, payment at checkout, and payment on net credit terms. And the 4th then, of course, with commission payment is addressing the any commission that is owed back to the agency after the booking has transpired and settlement of that.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing that. And just before, I think it'd be useful to go through each one of them in turn. Just before we do that, maybe Jeff, as you represent the whole hospitality industry on your own, right? Or at least I think you're very representative of the hotel sector. How are these 4 main use cases in line with what you ideally want to solve for? Are they the right 4 ones, and are all of them of equal importance, or is there 1 or 2 that really seems at the top for you, or do you think all 4 are important?
Honestly, all of them have the same importance, and only because it comes with payments. Anything payment related, I think this should apply to, because eliminating the fact that credit cards are the only form of payment it seems to be had. If we open those channels up to other sorts of payments, alternative payments, local payments, things of that nature, and streamline it to where the hotel doesn't have to really focus hard on when it has to be done, all this paperwork, getting it done, and having it done in a secure way is extremely important. I would like to see the payment manager being used not only on the B2B, and hope more hotel adoption is had on that, and that's what this group is going to be focusing on, but also what we can do to do this across the board, whether it's B2C, whether it's OPA, or OTA, not OPA, OTA involvement, any sort of payment that we can have, because the pandemic really hurt the hotels and the fact that now we don't have the manpower to do a lot of the back office stuff. So that's another thing that I think this tool would be greatly used for.
On that topic, just pick up on that point about manpower. Do you see that as the glass is half full or half empty? Do you think it's going to make it even more likely that hoteliers will be interested in OPA, or on the flip side, is it maybe a constraint because if the manpower is not there, you may not have time to project manage it or what have you?
I hope it forces the hotels to do this, because the pandemic really helped the hotels realize that we need to move forward with payments. Contactless is a huge one now that really got pushed with this.
Mm.
And the whole strategy around payments is now becoming a focus among hotels because now they need the money to keep their operations open. And what's the best way to do that is to adopt some of these tools that, yes, might take a little bit of time in the beginning to adopt, but once it is, it reduces that stress and that worry about trying to get the money back into their pockets. So anything that can be done to streamline the process of accepting payments and then to offer additional payments that are cheaper in the long run, it should be a no-brainer for the hotels to adopt.
Okay. No, thanks for sharing that. If it's okay for the group, let's maybe look in turn at each of the 4 use cases that Dee mentioned. So, let's go them in the same order. So let's maybe start with the advanced deposit and prepayment. I think it would be useful, and any of you, I don't know, Javi or any of you can start. If you can describe for that use case, how does your OPA really help, right? So how would it be implemented, this payment manager, and what are the main benefits that you see for this prepayment use case?
So the first thing I would like to say is that those were the 4 main use cases that we conceived in our theoretical lab, right? So when we're looking at what kind of problems the OPA could address, we thought of those 4 right away, right? In fact, the 4th one wasn't even there because commissions was not even inside B2B payments. We considered that like a different beast, and there was another working group taking care of them. And it was later on that we realized, wait a minute, the whole infrastructure we're designing here, the payment manager, could be used bidirectionally. Why should we limit ourselves to just payments in one direction? So the 4th came up a little bit later. Now, the other thing is that as soon as we started implementing the first full-fledged version of operational version of a payment manager, and we started talking to the stakeholders, and we started implementing their actual use cases, we quickly realized that the picture was more complex than we originally had in mind, and every use case actually branched out in different specific or subcases that had their own complexities. Like, for instance, when we talk to, depending on the stakeholders you were talking, it's not the same when you were talking to a hotel or to an OTA or to a bed bank or to a tour operator. The whole picture changed dramatically. For instance, talking to this first use case that you mentioned, the prepayment, right, which was very common before the pandemic. It was gaining a lot of momentum. Hotels wanted to get paid earlier, and they were offering their best rates, and clients were willing to pay months in advance in order to get those best rates. That was before the pandemic, right? With the pandemic, all that changed, obviously, and now it's probably getting back to what it was. But back then, when we talked to bed banks, we realized that these guys, they're sitting in between OTAs and hoteliers, and sometimes other bed banks. There's an OTA, a bed bank, another bed bank, another bed bank, and finally a hotel. That happens. And when you talk about prepayment, this gets really tricky because you are talking about very low margins, right? Especially when there's so many stakeholders in the chain, and sometimes they have different payment terms. Sometimes one is paying on net 30 terms, the next guy on the chain, which then needs to prepay the next one or pay on checkout or things like that, and it gets crazy. So what we realized is that one of the things that OPA can contribute here is automating the end-to-end payment process so that payments are consistent with the back-to-back payment terms that everybody has in these complex value chains, right? So if I have an agreement with you so that I will pay you at the time of checkout, and I have an agreement with the next guy that I'll pay on net 30 days upon receipt of an invoice, you can actually set up the payment manager so that it orchestrates everything that needs to happen between all the players, that an invoice is generated, that the payment is triggered when the right conditions are met, and you don't rely on manual procedures, which are obviously ever prone, and are the cause of multiple incidents in this industry. So one of the great things about the payment manager is that it can orchestrate the end-to-end payment process fully automatically, and eliminating all those manual errors that are the main source of friction at the end of the day. That on top of facilitating alternative forms of payment, which make a lot of sense when the margins are so tight. So that's one of the things that we've seen a lot of room of opportunity here and a lot of interest.
I want to pick up just on the comment you made right at the start about this prepayment that was taking off before COVID. Then COVID happened, and now your point about it might be coming back. This question for Dee, Laurie, or Jeff. In your view, do you already see that? I mean, is that a use case that you expect will come back? Will consumers be willing to prepay X weeks before getting a room, and will the hoteliers offer them whatever type of benefit, and that therefore that use case is going to remain relevant? Do you have any hard data, or just even perspective based on your own business or your interactions in the industry? I don't know who wants to go first.
I mean, I would weigh in that I think regardless of the type of rate, whether it's fully prepaid, partially prepaid, guaranteed even, that the framework supports it. Because to Zavi's point, a lot of what we accomplished in our many detailed conversations about the specification, just by the way, that was a lot. We I think fleshed that out pretty well so that it could support all of that, so that we weren't defining something that might not be flexible enough in the end, regardless of the rate. Because also a lot of what we wanted to accomplish was to take the PCI issues out of the place that they're in previously, in terms of whether you're faxing, emailing, or actually clear text, sending information to the hotel about 16 digits. So I think we accomplished that. Now, obviously the proof is in the pudding. So, we have several pilots that I think each of us are going after to ensure that we didn't miss anything. But I do still think in the end that what we defined is flexible enough to make that work. And the efficiency, so what the pandemic created was the urgency to actually take advantage of the efficiency of collecting money prior to arrival at the property. Again, at the end of the day, all anybody wants is money in their bank account for a service that they're selling, right? Whether that's a room or whatever that is. So that is what we need to do. And everybody is finally now in on, well, how can I make that happen so that when they hit the property door, what I'm doing is really just answering questions about other things.
Okay, so message is OPA should be fit for purpose for all the different sub use cases within this advanced deposit or prepayment or however we call it, and it's likely to come back, but however strong it comes back or in whatever form. I think your point, Laurie, is that it's fit for purpose. Dee and Jeff, anything to add on that one, either on the occurrence of this advanced deposit or just building what Laurie said?
I agree with what Laurie said as far as the flexibility. It really makes it more seamless for hotels to adjust to changes in the world, as far as, hey, maybe prepaid rates, people aren't as willing to book a prepaid rate during the time of a pandemic, or even with what's going on in the Ukraine right now. It gives them the flexibility. They don't really need to change their process based on the fact that they want to change the types of rates that they're offering. The payment manager can take care of all of that for them. It's just a matter of, I'm going to send different payment instructions. So there's different rules that go along with this rate, and the payment manager can pick it up without any issue using these standards, specifications.
Now, this really goes back to the operational side of things I was talking about. Now that manpower is not necessarily there, we still need to focus on the guest. So by having the payment manager and implementing that and taking care of that side of things, the back office side of things, Now the hotels can focus on the guest, and they can bring that guest experience back pre-pandemic to where it is all about hospitality and not about operations.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the guests and maybe go to the second use case. The payment at checkout. So at first, if I may say, what do we mean by that these days, right? Because we still have the traditional, I'm the guest, I go to the checkout physically, but some hotels send me the link and go to the app and do the check-in and check-out on the app, and by the way, you don't even need to pick up the key anymore, go straight to your room. So there's all these different permutations of, so what do we still call a payment at checkout? And I see you smile, Habib, so maybe start with you.
Right. Because that's one of the funniest ones. When we thought originally what this is, the payment at checkout, and when it applies and everything, we had our idea. Then you go, welcome to reality, right? We found really interesting things here. Again, a lot of them connected with the bed banks. Those poor guys, they always get hit from all different fronts. So what happens with payment at checkout, which we might as well say payment at check-in, because that's what happens here is a lot of times hotels, when talking about B2B payments, hotels get paid at checkout or have payment terms at checkout. In reality, that's what happens when they offer prepaid rates. The OTA, Expedia, for instance, they charge the guest on at the time of booking. They really get paid. It's like a prepayment. It's a prepayment, really. So the payment at checkout happens most of the times when hotels offer prepaid rates. The OTA gets paid at the time of booking, but then the OTA doesn't pay the hotel at the time of booking. They pay the hotel at the time of checkout. Very rarely, OTAs actually pay hotels, really prepay the hotels at the time of booking, even though the rate is a prepaid rate, and I'm sure Jeff can testify to this. They rarely get paid, although their rates are prepaid, they rarely get paid at the time of booking. So what happens is the hotel holds on to the credit card, and they charge the card either at check-in or at checkout. Typically at check-in, they should do it at checkout, but they don't wait. And that's when a lot of the problems happen. Again, with bed banks, what we're seeing now is that in many countries, there are a specific electronic billing regulations. You need to, if you want to take advantage of the possibility of recovering the VAT, bed banks need to file for that possibility in every country. And some of them are starting to do it. And if they don't get a VAT compliant invoice, they cannot recover the VAT. So what happens is when they pay with a VCC, when the hotels, because they are not used to sending an invoice in order to settle the VCC, they simply settle the VCC, they don't send the invoice, the bed bank does not get that VAT compliant invoice, they cannot recover the VAT, and they end up losing a significant amount of money, because VAT can be as high as 20% in the UK, for instance, right? So payment at checkout is very tricky. If you want to, in certain scenarios where in the one I described, it's necessary to collect an invoice. And if you're paying with a certain form of payment, like a VCC, which is the typical one, it's very likely you're not going to get an invoice. So again, here, for instance, the payment manager, back to what I was saying before, it can create it can orchestrate the payments so that the VCC is settled upon receipt of a VAT compliant electronic invoice. The payment manager can connect to the PMS, obtain an invoice, and then release the VCC, or even settle the VCC via straight-through processing automatically on behalf of the hotel, which is even better, right? Because the hotel doesn't have to do anything. They simply close their folio at the time of checkout, and automatically that triggers an invoice, and the invoice triggers the settlement of the VCC, which is in file. It's on file in the payment manager. So that's the kind of things that we'll see more and more. That's like, wow, that sounds like a miracle. That doesn't happen today, but it's already starting to happen, and we have some use cases with some hotels that we're proving that this is possible. It's not impossible at all. It's feasible with existing technology, and we have the standard that makes it possible as well.
So Jeff, does that sound like a miracle to you? And is that a key potential benefit for you as well?
This is an amazing thing that this came about, because once again, operational wise, it does help those the hotels, and it keeps the focus on the guests. So I'm gonna beat that saying to death, because that's what this is all about: is how do we help our hotels? This product right here, this solution has that ability to take away the back office operations to focus more on the guest.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. Laurie, D, anything to add on this payment at checkout use case? I think Ravi was very clear, but you have your own perspective in terms of either the role your company also play or how you see this OPA being implemented for this use case.
I think just to add to what Xavi said about the VAT invoice, that's obviously a nice benefit as well of using the payment manager for payment of at checkout, but also with the VCC, same scenario where it's been, it's prepaid by the guest to the OTA, and then a VCC is issued to the property. There's, the other situation that it alleviates is someone forgetting to charge the VCC at the time the guest checks out, and that breakage that happens with that, or not understanding exactly what can be charged to that VCC. And that's where, the payment instructions, the delivery of those payment instructions in much more detail than can be done today through the booking channel is the where that benefits the hotels.
Yeah, and I would add that what Xavi and I found in one of the pilots that we did around this process, one of our best learnings was, what is the front desk doing? Because we had our assumptions about that, and they proved us a bit wrong in terms of timing and to the point about checkout versus check-in and exactly when is check-in. So so what the front desk was doing in reality was what we learned, and then the timing around that to actually collect the money before they could get their hands on the VCC card was a key learning, because then we could actually collect the money. If they showed up for work at 3 a.m. and they started processing all the VCCs, and then by the time our process kicked in an hour later, they were all collected, we're like, what are you doing? So, that honestly is why we really want to see the adoption in some more of these pilots, because there's some real value in the actual behavior at the property. Some of our assumptions weren't accurate, they weren't as accurate as we thought they were. But again, the flexibility of adjusting once you learn that, Xavi adjusted his clock, and midnight comes and we got the money and they can't get to it. So that was good. And now the hotel is like, I can't believe we're not doing this for all our properties. So they're all in on, well, how quickly can you roll this out? I mean, come on, this is perfect. So it was a good learning.
Great, which was the value of doing pilots, right? So just conscious of time, the third use case, you mentioned this payment on credit terms. Now, is that something completely separate, or does it go back to what Javi was mentioning earlier about this chain of stakeholders and they all owe money to each other at different times? Or is it when you had that in mind, was it something very specific?
It is exactly that. It's that requirement for that invoice before payment is issued, and ensuring that that's been taken care of. So exactly what Xavi was talking about.
Javi, I see you want to add something.
Yeah, I think this scenario, when we proposed it, was motivated because there's a whole part of the industry, especially tour operators and DMCs, destination management companies, and also a lot of bed banks, at least part of their business works like this. And this comes from the old times, especially in the case of tour operators. Before the internet, they used to buy hotel rooms in bulk. They had static rates for the entire summer. And basically, they pre-negotiated every season, and they bought hotel rooms, as I said, in bulk. And then when the guest would go to the hotel would invoice the tour operator, because back then there was no internet. processing those invoices. We're talking about literally millions of invoices that they had to process manually. It took weeks, if not months, to get those invoices processed. And then by de facto, they needed to work on credit terms. And that's how the industry got used to working like that.
Yeah.
De facto, right? And it was typical in the tour operating space to have net 30 terms or even net 45 or net 60 sometimes. That was very, very common. Now, but the funny thing is that today we have technology that eliminates all that burden of processing the invoice manually, and it could happen in real time. The invoice could be generated, in fact, can be generated in real time at the PMS, sent to the tour operator, reconciled in real time, and paid also in real time, literally. But still, we have the inertia from years, many years, decades, working like that. And in fact, because of that, a lot of companies actually have built their business model, tour operators, that their business model is built around these credit capabilities that they get, which is not sound. It's not a sound business model, but it is what it is. And that's how a lot of companies still work. At the expense of pissing someone off, I would dare say that this model has its days counted. I think it's becoming a fossil as we speak. What's gonna happen, I think, is that the invoice is gonna become the trigger of the payment. If we want to automate payments, we want a payment to be triggered automatically when it's due. I think the invoice is perfect because it's something that can electronically say, okay, this is how much I wanna get paid. Send me the money. And this can happen, as I said, in real time because an invoice is generated automatically in a PMS. When you close the folio, when the guest checks out, the invoice is generated. Nobody has to do anything manually. It just happens, right? So I think the invoice is the perfect trigger for the payment. Now, what's going to disappear is the need for having so many days to process the invoice. It's not a real need today anymore. It's more a financial working capital need from some companies that they have not been able yet to adjust their business model to the new technological situation. But the payment manager is going to accelerate that transition. So I think that what we're going to see more and more is that all scenarios, in fact, all the different scenarios we've been talking about will converge, in my opinion, to a scenario where there will be payment terms, which will probably be at the time. Maybe there will be prepayments that will happen before check-in, and then there will be payment at checkout, which is at the time the guest leaves and an invoice is generated, because that's the moment that you can automatically trigger a payment and get the invoice reconciled, complying with all the requirements if there's a need for a VAT compliant invoice or anything. I think that's where we're heading in the next few years.
Okay, thanks for that. And maybe just 1 minute on the last use case, and then we'll ask the first poll question on the commission payment. Maybe Dee, it's best for you to describe, that one in terms of, what was the, how could that be implemented, and what could be the benefit of leveraging the payment manager for commission payment?
I think this is another one that can be automatically triggered, once the stay has completed and the guest has checked out. It's going to allow the properties to deliver their commission payments to their agency partners in a much faster and more efficient way. And I think that itself is going to be beneficial to the relationships that they've built with those partners. And it's going to strengthen the confidence in the travel agents when they're booking with those partners that are able to do that.
Okay. So let me just stop here, give 30 seconds for the panelists to freshen up and drink some water. So Melia, if you can show the first poll question for the audience. So that's when the audience has to do some work. So now that we've described the four main use case, at least the ones that initially Javi and the rest of the team thought about, and we described how it could work and what would be some of the benefits around automation and elsewhere. We just wanted to ask your honest opinion, and let's assume we have hopefully a representative audience here. Can you tell us what do you think are the chances for the Open Payment Alliance to become widely adopted in the next 5 years? So this is not just pilots here and there, but really be adopted. So not likely, meaning it might remain just a small number of pilots, quite likely, maybe in some countries or for some segments, very likely, global adoption across most of the segments. So I just don't know yet because you haven't had time to think about it, or you just don't know yet, or you don't want to commit. But this is anonymous, so you can commit, and we won't get back to you. We don't know who is going to say what. So we're going to give you, 2 or 3, like let's say maybe 5 other seconds, and then I don't know, Melia, if you can see the number of responses, but if hopefully, let's say more than half of the attendees have replied, the tool will show the responses, and then we'll be able to to comment. So Melia, if we've had enough responses, can you maybe show the? Thank you. So well, I think, guys, we've done a pretty good job, right? Though there's only a very small number that said not likely. So it sounds like, I mean, it's maybe self-selected. That's maybe why people are on this call, right? But the vast majority say quite likely. So I'm sure that includes the French people that don't get too excited usually. And then we have 24% that say very likely. So how does that compare the team compared to what you expected to see as results? Do you take that as a positive, or you still work to be done in the education work?
Are you asking me?
That's positive.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's very positive.
Yeah, I think it's considering that we're still at the very early stages. It's very positive to see that there's so much enthusiasm. Yeah, definitely.
Well, just so that you guys need to share your enthusiasm and your words of wisdom with more people. So we definitely value doing this kind of webinars. So let's maybe move to, so that's the upside, right? So potential adoption, all the benefits. But let's maybe move and start with Jeff in terms of the key objective is adoption, right? We have the standard. Laurie has had enough of all these conversations. She feels it's fit for purpose. Pilots have been done. Now we really need to get adoption, right? So from a hotel perspective, Jeff, what might be some of the challenges or some of the things that hotels need to make? Is it more the technical side? Is it the business case? Is it project management skills? Is it awareness? How would you rank the key challenges that we need to overcome for massive adoption?
The key challenge would have to be on the technical side. Educating the hotels about the benefits of this, about reducing human error, getting the money into your bank account faster, things of that nature is, once again, a no-brainer for any hotelier. But it's more now, how do we get this implemented on the brand side to benefit all the hotels? If one franchise decides to do it, that's all fine and dandy, but it doesn't really help the broader spectrum. Getting the actual brands involved to see the benefits of this and implementing that would be a faster progression to implementing the OPA.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. And I apologize, the light goes off automatically if I don't move enough, so don't worry. I still have electricity, just
You have to wave your hands or something?
I actually have to walk out of the room, so I won't do that again. So thanks for sharing your view on these challenges. I mean, maybe the slightly related question we just got from the audience was, can anybody comment on the status of adoption? So is it progressing in some markets, in some countries more than others for the bigger brand or the small brand? Is it too early to tell? Or Laurie, Ravi, or T, is there any trend as to where adoption might start first?
Yeah, well, we are obviously as one of the proponents of one of the first payment managers out there. We've been doing our job, and we've already starting to see. We're already seeing significant traction, and I can say we have like 50 travel companies already using our payment manager. We're talking about all kinds of travel companies. We have OTAs, we have bed banks. Bed banks probably is one of the major adopters. We have tour operators. Tour operators are kind of a new entrant here. They used to have their old procedures, but now they're very excited and they're entering this new game. Destination management companies and TMCs, I mean, all the spectrum, all different kinds of companies are really part of these early adopters. And in terms of regions, I would say I think it's worldwide, especially Europe, because we're based in Europe, but we also have very important players in APAC, in Australia, and in the US. Those would be the major regions for us.
Will it be in sync, Laurie and Dee, with what you already see or what you expect to see in terms of where adoption might start?
I would say that aligns with what was expected, and obviously there's a lot more education that needs to be done to make people understand what the benefits are. The other thing that I think is going to really push the adoption is providing folks with tools, with something they can take to their leadership and say, this is why we need to do this. This is the benefit. This is the ROI on doing this, and making sure that they've got all of those tools in place. I think that's what the working group focus is going to be here in the short term.
Yeah, I think that was part of what came out of Miami, was how can we provide kind of the background or the reasons why the stakeholders at a given brand or at the right level are supporting what needs to happen for the hoteliers to put this in place. So that is our next moving forward, I think, activities, is to figure out how to position and educate them on what that is.
And Laurie, do you think, based on your past experience with other adoption of maybe technologies or other topics, you think it could be all types of hoteliers, the big brand, mid-size, and very small one, or do you think it could be one versus the other, or maybe too early to tell?
Well, I think there's some different approaches depending on the relationship between the brand and the properties. And I think this is why it's a bit harder for them to just be all in. They have to go, well, but I don't have that contract, or I can't act on their behalf. And to Mike's point earlier, I'll plug the Atlanta conference a bit. This is one of the reasons we want to talk about merchant of record, because that tends to be getting in the way of them feeling like they're in a position to either implement this or not. They can be supportive of it, but if they're not in a position to commercially contract for it to process these payments, then they get a bit stuck.
Okay, so maybe just to close off the discussion about the challenges or things we need to overcome for adoption, if you can ask Melia to maybe show the second poll question for the audience, because now that you warmed up, we assume that you'll be even more equipped to answer the question here. So what are the key challenges for hotels to leverage the OPA framework? And we try to brainstorm what could be some of the challenges. So either no challenge, if you think, as a hotel, you already done it or you will do it, or is it more, number two, for commercial reason, unclear benefits, unclear business case? Number three, is it more around the lack of IT resources, if you have to make changes internally, change management issues, which could be cultural, don't want to change, or you don't have the people to support the change management, or finally the run, the unclear cost, right? Not clear about what's the capex or what's the opex that it might add. It may have some saving, but does it add any layer of cost, one-off or ongoing? So again, like before, if you can vote, we don't know who's going to say what, so don't worry. But I think it might give us useful guidance, also to think about where we need, when I say we, people in this room and elsewhere, to focus on the adoption. So Melia, again, if you have half or over half of respondents, maybe you can show us the results, and we can comment with the panel. I expect more responses now. People should be warmed up, and thank you. So the challenge fairly spread out. That's quite interesting. So the top two are IT, more on the technical side, change management, which I assume are more people people topics, and then maybe by the time you had the business case and you have a clear cost, you get more or less to another third, right? So it's a third. Anybody wants to comment? Is that what you expected, or how do you think it would come out? Maybe Laurie or Dee, to start with you.
I think the unclear benefits was what we came out of Miami with, was how to articulate that in a way that people can take back to their brand or to their management company and say, this is why we want to do this and why we want to spend money on it, and why you need to support us. So you're right about the third. And then obviously that will play into the technical resource choices and priorities.
Again, maybe you were convincing enough today.
Convincing, yes. Yeah. Be positive, Pascal.
Slip of the tongue, so I haven't had enough coffee today. Jeff, what about you compared to how you would have answered as a hotelier? Any surprises or anything in this?
No, I thought this was going to be right on about the lack of resources and the change management. Obviously, the resource is going to be a huge issue trying to implement this. And then with so much turnover happening at hotels, trying to get the next person in to understand the benefits of this and implementing this. So I expected these results. I'm kind of sad about the unclear part. I was hoping we were a lot more convincing than this about the major benefits to the hotels, but I'm glad to see that it's a lot less than the other ones.
Well, we only have 3 or 4 minutes left, so let's go to our last question. If I can ask each one of you to share, if there's one key takeaway that you want the audience to. Sorry, Melia, can you? I wanted to show that at the end. Sorry for that. That's my fault. It was more question to the panel, to the panelists. So if I can ask each panelist to share the key takeaway that they want the audience to remember from this panel, and then we'll have a final poll questions after that before you can drop off. So shall we do it in reverse order, alphabetical order? Ravi, do you want to go first? What would be the key takeaway for the audience?
Yeah, for me, and based on our own experience with our early adopters program, I think there's no turning back. That's my message. Our early adopters have been able to measure the benefits of the payment manager in terms of efficiency and cost optimization. All of them want to go ahead beyond the pilot and are making themselves innovative proposals. Our implementation pipeline is saturated with multiple initiatives, and new use cases are constantly popping up. I think that today, clearly adopting the payment manager is a source of competitive advantage already, but in a few years from now, not using a payment manager will be the opposite, a cause of competitive disadvantage. So to me, the call to action would be the sooner you implement a payment manager, the better. The wait and see strategy is definitely not a winner's strategy.
Thank you. Laurie, your word of wisdom or your key takeaway?
My key takeaway is I love the results of the polls. I think we've initially done a good job. We do obviously still have some work to do, but certainly the benefits of COVID in terms of cash sensitivity across the value chain is providing the right level of urgency that we need to help everybody move this initiative forward.
Okay, thank you. Jeff, as a hotelier, what would be your key takeaway?
Spread the word. The only way this gets implemented and adopted is by letting everyone know about this. So everyone listening to this, anyone who's part of Head in our HTNG, please spread the word to all the hotels so they can understand the benefits of this. They can get involved with this working group to build more use cases, and it would be easier for the big brands to implement on a larger scale. So that's what I'm hoping will happen with this.
Thank you. And Dee, I'll let you close off.
I kind of the same that Xavi and Laurie said, that the key takeaway I would agree with is, can you afford not to move forward with this? And we're in a very volatile time with many things affecting the way that the travel industry has done business for some time, and I think that this is an opportunity to kind of batten down the hatches and be prepared for those volatile changes, and be able to make a switch without having a huge impact on your business if you're working with a payment manager and using them to process your payments.
Thank you. And maybe, Melia, if you can show for the last minute, we have the questions for the audience, for those of you that are still with us. We wanted to see if we got you excited enough to get involved with the OPA. So you're allowed to say no. You can say maybe. If you are already involved, I would suggest you say yes, because it means that you already are. So you assume you will be still involved with the OPA in a working group and or in pilots and implementation. And again, you're allowed to say I don't know yet, because maybe you're not the only one to decide. And I think we have 20 or 30 seconds left in the panel. So Melia, if you have enough responses, you can maybe show the results. So we only have one no. Okay, so most
awesome.
people are maybe or yes for sure, or one person doesn't know yet, but they'll know very soon, hopefully. And on that positive note, I wanted to thank all the panelists. This hour has gone by very fast, and hopefully we gave you interest to pick up the conversation in Atlanta, as Jeff said, in all the other venues, because I'm sure we can learn from each other. And thanks a lot for your time today.
Thanks, Pascal.